The controversy over police officers who have made inflammatory and hateful social media posts now ramping up around the country. Here in Philadelphia, 72 officers are off the street and on administrative duty pending an internal investigation. St. Louis, the circuit attorney has barred 60 officers from bringing their cases to her office. That's 5% of the city's force. And law enforcement agencies in Dallas and Lake County, Florida, now investigating similar allegations. This is all the fallout from the work of the Plainview Project, launched to look at whether social media eroded public trust in policing. It has identified thousands of Facebook posts and comments by more than 3,500 current and former police officers in 8 jurisdictions around the country. Here's one that they found from an officer in Philadelphia. Quote, "Here's your Miranda rights. You have the right to shut the F up. Anything you say will cause me to effing throat punch you." Another from an officer in Dallas, "Just another savage that needs to be exterminated." Or this from an officer in St. Louis, "F these," well, you can read it. They also shared offensive memes like this one: "White privilege is a myth perpetrated by those who hate white people." In Philadelphia alone, out of 1,000 officers studied, 330 were found to have such posts. In a statement, the Philadelphia Police Union President John McNesby said, "Our officers are entitled to due process just like any other citizen." So where are we headed with this? Joining me now is the founder of the Plainview Project, attorney Emily Baker White. Emily, what was your standard for inclusion in the database?
Thank you, Michael. It's good to be with you. So we asked one question when we looked at all of these posts to determine whether they should be in the database. And that question was, is it possible that this post, this comment, this statement, this meme could have an effect on civilian trust in policing?
So I have some additional posts. In fact, put the next one up on the screen, Catherine, and we'll use that standard and take a look at this. Looks like an Antifa-type protest. Whenever these people in masks show up, they should be greeted by these people, a SWAT team, who should then send them to see these people in masks, a surgical team. That meets your standard because why?
This image to me indicates that police officers think that they should do violence against protesters. And police officers are actually dispatched to protest to protect protesters. And if they're not willing to do that, and if they think that protesters should be the victims of violence by police officers, that's a problem.
Is it possible that the police officer, if it were a police officer who posted this, thinks it's funny, it's off color, it's in bad taste, it may be discriminatory in some sense, but hey, that's their morbid sense of humor. That's not the way in which they conduct themselves on the job.
You know, police officers have incredibly hard jobs, and we all say things that we might regret later on. But in this case, if I am a person who wants to go to a protest and I'm viewing this image, that could make me think that the police officer who responds to protect me isn't in my corner because I am a protester. And this gets to my biggest fear about this entire group of posts, right? My fear is that someone is going to see this and think that because they are protesting on the street, or because they look different or pray differently than an officer, that if they need help, if they need to call 911, they're worried that the person who responds will not be in their corner because they are different from that officer.
Here's another. Go ahead and run. He likes fast food. Talk to me about this image.
This is the image that I saw that first encouraged me to start this project and to think, is there more out there than just this meme? And this is obviously a troubling image. I found this image first when I was investigating a police brutality claim during my time as an attorney at the Federal Community Defender Office in Philadelphia. And I was investigating whether officers in a certain jurisdiction might have indicated hostility against my client and my client's family. And if I see an image like that, it seems to encourage, endorse, glorify police brutality or violence by police dogs against citizens and suspects. And it may be that police officers need to use a dog in a certain situation, but I would hope that if they do, they're not hoping that that dog hurts the suspect. people, no matter what they're accused of, have the right not to be subject to excessive force by police officers, not to be subject to excessive violence by police officers. And this image seems to be encouraging that.
It's very difficult to define the standard, right? Isn't this Potter Stewart discussing pornography? You know it when you see it, maybe. I mean, there's some very difficult legal issues to be determined as to whether firing police officers or disciplining them for some of these posts would infringe on their First Amendment rights. I posit that at the end because I want people to think about it. Emily, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Dozens of police officers yanked from the streets for posting hate-filled messages on social media, some endorsing violence, racism, and bigotry. The shocking story involves officers in at least 8 different cities, making headlines across the nation. A watchdog group called In Plain View compiled thousands of officers' inflammatory posts into a database, and here are just a few of the examples. It's a good day for a chokehold. Or this, a meme showing a Confederate flag photo with words, "This does not offend me," and then a photo of sagging pants and the words, "This bleep does." That meme was shared by law enforcement officers in both Dallas and Phoenix. And this, here's your Miranda rights. You have the right to shut the F up. Anything you say will cause me to effing throat punch you. The consequences are piling up fast. In St. Louis, the circuit attorney barring 59 police officers from bringing their cases to her office. Police departments in at least 4 cities are now launching their own investigations. Joining us now, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Rick Tulsky. He helped break this story and expose the officers' offensive posts. He's co-founder of the nonprofit Injustice Watch. Rick, wow. All these police departments now forced to confront these offensive social media posts. How did this all begin?
It all began with a lawyer in Philadelphia named Emily Baker White, who found in a case she was working on offensive posts by an officer and started looking at whether it was widespread. She came to us with her research and we took it from there.
And what did you do?
So what we did was we took Philadelphia, which was the largest of the 8 cities that Emily Baker White studied, and we identified officers with posts that she had flagged, studied the connection between what they were saying in their posts and their conduct on the street by studying complaints against them and by studying lawsuits and which ones ended in settlement. And we found of 328 officers with offensive posts in Philadelphia that 139 of them had lawsuits against them that had led to 100 settlements.
Wow. And now at least 4 different departments are doing their own investigations, from Dallas to Philly to Lake County, Florida. If these posts are in fact verified through their investigations, what message does it send to the communities they're serving?
So, you know, one of the interesting things is that the police unions say right to free speech. This is what they're saying on their own time. But the communities that are affected say this shows we can't trust the police, that they're not working for us. And at a time in this country where there's such a divide between police and the communities, we think that's a really serious issue that the departments need to grapple with.
Without social media, do you think these potential biases would have been exposed?
Well, people in the community say, of course this is what they say. The issue is this tends to prove it.
And will it result in accountability?
Well, you know, I give Commissioner Ross in Philadelphia tremendous credit for last week taking 72 officers off the street because of their posts while it's examined. And, you know, it raises all kinds of questions about whether they're properly vetting the officers they hire. A lot of the departments are doing sensitivity training. I think those kind of steps are really important.
And so beyond that, what do you see as maybe the impact of highlighting these overlooked social media posts moving forward? You talk about maybe how they're now adjusting some of their practices.
hopefully they're adjusting their practices. You know, it's impossible to make people not think what they think. I do think it's possible to make them behave in a way that you would want your officers to behave. These are the people whose duty it is to protect the community.
Rick Tulsky, interesting story, good reporting. Thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Republican lawmakers